John DeSando.
Classics, let's go to the movies and share some popcorn, soda pop with our friends. Turn off our cell phones and get away. Night or day, it's John DeSando on the radio. We'll watch the credits from up high and low. Cinema Classics on
Cinema Classics is produced by John DeSando. It airs Thursdays at 8:01 p.m. on WCBE 90.5 FM. Listen to shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Mary Yerina.
And this is Cinema Classics. Mary, last 30 years in television, I don't know anybody as successful or as powerful as Jerry Seinfeld.
Well, Seinfeld represented, I think, the last era of water cooler television where everybody watched it and you talked about it the next day at the water cooler at work. With our modern era of streaming really diffusing the audience across a broader spectrum of content, you don't get that anymore.
And I hear that Jerry is constantly prodded to bring the people back, and he's so smart. There's no way it'll never be the same, and it wouldn't be.
It wouldn't be.
And they're all geniuses. It's just perfect. And
but he did bring part of the group back together. The writing team for Unfrosted
very good.
was from the Seinfeld team and includes Jerry Seinfeld himself.
All right, so we have Unfrosted. It stars Jerry. He produces. He co-writes.
He directs for the first time.
And most importantly, it's the first time he directs.
Yes.
And I didn't see any flaws in his directing. He's just a natural genius. But it's Unfrosted, and it's a fictional struggle between Post and Kellogg's for the empire that they were hoping to get without milk.
Well, it's an absurdist take on what was actually a true competition between Post and Kellogg in 1963 to bring to market a breakfast toaster pastry. We probably are more familiar with Pop-Tarts because they won the battle, but Post's Country Squares did in fact stay on the market and were eventually sold and are still on the market today with another company as Toast-'em Pop-Ups.
Is that right?
That is true.
And what were they thinking? Country Squares? Could you come up with a better name?
Well, I'm not sure Pop-Tarts was the original name either.
I know. Right?
In fact, a true fact in the film Unfrosted is that they really were called Trat Pops.
They were.
But they changed it to be Pop-Tarts to reflect Andy Warhol. No, I'm kidding about the Trat Pop. That doesn't mean anything. They had another name.
Isn't that awkward?
They didn't have a name for it, but the Andy Warhol and others pop art movement actually led to the name Pop-Tarts.
Hi, Mary. Now, you and I have been together a long time, and I have often confessed to you I'm very difficult on comedy.
Yes, you have.
I am. And how does this come off as comedy for you?
I think there were more misses than hits for me. It's an hour and 30-plus minute film. Because of its roots with such a heavy creative team in episodic comedic television, it felt more like television, and because of that, the length of the film without consistent hits comedy-wise made the film seem a little too long.
Yeah, there are moments that just seem awkward.
Very awkward.
Yeah, and of course we ought to try it ourselves to criticize Jerry for this, but after all, he's a billionaire, and
that doesn't give him carte blanche to make a bad film.
And isn't that funny? I often wonder, how could Jerry look at Russia's and not say, this is not working? How would you not be able to do that?
Well, the pedigree of this film is it grew out of, if you're familiar with his comedy, he has a classic bit about Pop-Tarts. And his writing colleagues during the pandemic talked about, we should expand that and let's see if we could create a film around it. And so they did that. In fact, principal photography on this was done in 2022, which leads to some concerns that it took so long then
Sure.
to bring it into release through streaming on Netflix. So, it was born out of a simple idea, which reminded me very much of the Seinfeld show, which was a show about nothing,
Exactly.
but every episode was a show about something within that nothing spectrum. But here you have an actual plot and multiple characters. It's a who's who cast of stand-up comedians and comedic actors, which is wonderful. And there are some really great moments that made me laugh out loud. But they have a plot, but they don't take advantage of really, in my mind, delving into the depths of that plot. They bring in so much one-off cameo appearances and comedic opportunities for the stand-up comedians and actors that it felt very strung together and not complete.
Well, along those lines, I'm amused at how Jerry, and always, even with his stand-up, how he can pick on the most commonplace things and make them funny. And this is genius. So he tosses off stuff there that you might have to go back 2 or 3 times to catch everything that he's tossing off. For instance, I was thinking, he makes a little joke about niacin and xanthan.
And xanthan gum, yeah.
Xanthan gum. Who even thinks about that kind
Well,
of
if
thing?
you're in the food industry, one would think and hope that you did.
And he tosses those off, and that's when he's really strong for me.
Well, and Jerry plays Jerry. I mean, he plays a character named Bob Cabana who works for Kellogg's and is in product. I couldn't tell what he actually did. He seemed like he was in product development and
Yes.
advertising and marketing and
Yeah,
branding
yeah.
and kind of everything.
Yes.
And when he says xanthan gum, he actually says it like he would say Newman on the show. So there was
Yes.
a lot of his traditional mannerisms and pronunciations and that are fun to revisit.
Yeah, and it's a cute little war between Kellogg's and Post, and actually one of the highlights of the film were the 2 little kids, the dumpster kids.
The dumpster kids were very funny,
Very
and their scripts were very funny.
Yes,
Yeah.
the little girl.
Especially, yes.
Wow, she is a knockout. And I mean, I always am amazed at how little kids can pick up on sarcasm, and particularly on Seinfeld type of.
Well, and they spoke like adults, especially the girl. So it was easy I think it was easy for her to get laughs because she delivered her lines beautifully. So she was a highlight. The other highlight for me, and again, it was this string of cameos and comedic appearances,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to spoil it because
Yeah.
it was the biggest laugh for me. But when they bring in marketing people from New York to pitch a potential name and marketing campaign for Track Pops, it was such a funny moment, and just if you have any familiarity with the actors and the roles that they've played in the past, it was a laugh out loud moment for me.
And anybody who has to deal with HR in any industry would have to laugh at the people coming in to pitch, they're taking over the
Right.
HR.
Right.
And that stuff, yes, is very good. And you have people like Washburn, who, remember the guy from Seinfeld, the big guy that.
Oh yes, the guy who played Putty.
Yes, Putty. He's in there for a minute or 2.
Like not even a minute.
I know.
I think it's like 10 seconds.
But it's so good to see him,
Yeah, and Cedric the Entertainer is in this. Amy Schumer, Jim Gaffigan have lead roles playing Marjorie Post, who was a real person
Yes,
in real life.
at one point,
And-
the wealthiest woman in the country.
Right, and the CEO of Post, which then became General Mills. And then Jim Gaffigan plays a character that does not exist in real life, and that's Edsel Kellogg III,
Yes.
who inherits the company through nepotism and is portrayed as
And, you know,
a ne'er-do-well.
I gotta love it. Edsel.
Edsel,
Yeah.
I love the name.
I know,
yeah.
I just love it. Isn't that, you could just see Jerry and his brainwaves sitting around and he's, we'll name him Edsel. You know, just another one of these toss-up things that's amusing.
Well, and there's a lot of great toss-up things. In an interview I saw with Jim Gaffigan and Jerry Seinfeld, there's a funny line, but about Vietnam. That was an ad lib by Jim Gaffigan.
Whoa. And, I mean, talk about no holds barred.
It was no
Wow.
holds bar, and there are a few other moments like that in the film that were no holds bar that kind of, I wasn't sure which way to
Well,
react.
you know, who else but Jerry could get away with it? Who else but Jerry could get away with the Kennedy Marilyn Monroe bit?
Well, and basically the Kennedy bit about being just a total lech.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, I mean they do pick on things from that era, which I thought were brave. The one part of the film that I didn't feel worked as well for me was the whole mascot, the breakfast mascot strike, and then raid on the Kellogg Company headquarters, because it clearly was a reference to the January 6th
Oh,
incidents.
yes.
Especially when they raid the building and the Tony the Tiger head that's now been cut to look like it has the horns on it, and a few of the things they do when they get in there. And that, for me, didn't work as well, and it felt like it was too much. I mean, it may have been funny for a one episode a television series, but to add it on to what was already, had a great plot opportunity between these two warring companies, and taking this absurdist view on their competition, it just was not in context and not necessary.
Yeah, and I thought too, just to interject there on that, and I thought too, I'm getting a little weary of seeing Hugh Grant anymore. And I always loved Hugh Grant.
And he plays a true-to-life person.
Yeah.
Thurl Ravenscroft really was a British actor
Yes.
who was American, I take that back. But he really was the voice of Tony the Tiger,
Yes.
as well as a voice actor in many other things. So, it was a bit of a throwaway storyline that wasn't necessary to be carried beyond just kind of the background of the Kellogg culture, just like Snap, Crackle, and Pop were kind of background of the Kellogg culture with all these breakfast mascots. So, that part didn't work for me.
And depending on who you are, where you are, you might not enjoy the funeral as much as I think it had potential.
It had potential. I actually thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
The full breakfast, full cereal honors, I think. Is
Yeah, right.
Funeral.
Right.
Classics, let's go to the movies and share some popcorn, soda pop with